Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's AISC student webinar, an overview of the 2021 AISC Student Steel Bridge Competition. Today is October 14th, and my name is Sadie Brown. I'm the special event planner at AISC, and we're so excited to have everyone together for the first time this competition season. Our goal of today's meeting is to break down the larger aspects of the 2021 competition, including the new alternative competition options and the additional resources we've developed so that your team can confidently form their competition plans amidst all of this uncertainty we're currently facing. Over the past 25 years, SSBC has become a treasured staple for students and universities across the country and for our SSBC alum and faculty. I know that this year has been unlike anything we've ever experienced before, and it's been full of lots of challenges and uncertainties about the foreseeable future in all aspects of our lives. But we really hope that you leave this presentation knowing that AISC truly places your best interest at the forefront of every decision we make for this competition. And we also hope that you leave this webinar with a rekindled excitement to make the best of this year, this month, tomorrow. And we want you to challenge yourselves to find new ways to enjoy the things that make SSBC special to all of us: the camaraderie, the creative problem solving, and the real life engineering experience. So here's an overview of what we're going to cover today. First, we'll start by walking you through the 3 ways your team can compete in SSBC this year. We'll discuss each competition in detail and then move on to SSBC's plan for navigating the regional events through this coronavirus crisis. We'll walk you through the important dates that you should keep on your radar, including the upcoming pre-registration deadline on October 30th. We'll share with you the factors that drive AISC's decisions to modify or cancel the competition as circumstances evolve in the coming months, and how you'll be informed of these decisions. And next, we'll show you the resources that our team has developed to help you navigate the upcoming competition year. And finally, we'll leave 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. Your presenters today will be myself and Christy Sattler. Christy is AISC's Senior Engineer for University Relations at AISC. She oversees SSBC and is also responsible for the development of technical resources and programs for university-level steel teachers and students. Sean Farron's also joining us, and he'll be monitoring the chat feature to make sure all your questions are answered. Sean is AISC's Education Assistant, and he supports AISC's continuing education programs as well as university programs initiatives. And he manages all of SSBC participant inquiries, faculty advisor inquiries, student club applications, fabricator partnership requests, and helps us with regional event planning. And finally, I'm Sadie Brown, and as AISC's special event planner, my role is that I'm responsible for planning and facilitating the 18 regional events with our host schools and SSBC team. The 3 of us will be your main contacts this year, but obviously we couldn't make SSBC happen without our other team members, Christina Harbour and Maria Manukin. If you're interested, you can find a detailed breakdown of our roles on the Contact Us page of our website. I want to briefly talk about our SSBC Rules Committee because they are the masterminds behind our rules. In fact, the SSBC staff, myself included, don't have any role in developing the rules. And our Rules Committee consists of 7 professional volunteers and 3 AISC staff. As you can see from the list on the right, the professional volunteers come from all aspects of the steel industry. So we have university faculty, engineering consultants, fabricators, and our Rules Committee, they meet once a year in the spring at SSBC National Finals. They use this time to evaluate the current competition rules and also to develop rules for next year. And then they work all summer from the end of May through August to create the rules document. Throughout my times at regional events, many of you have asked us why the rules don't come out earlier than August, and this is why. As professional volunteers, a 3-month turnaround is about as quick as they can swing it, and I just thought this might be helpful for you to understand the behind the scenes of it. Any questions on the rules must be submitted to the Rules Committee directly via our Rules and Clarifications form on the website. When a question is submitted, the SSBC Rules Committee typically requires 1 to 2 weeks to provide an answer. And to ensure fairness to all teams, every question and answer will be posted on the clarifications page directly. Since the Rules Committee isn't present today on this webinar, we won't be able to answer any specific questions regarding the competition rules. So if you have any rules questions that come up throughout this presentation, just write them down, and then after head over to aisc.org/SSBC to complete the clarifications form. I have a few announcements before we dive into the exciting stuff today. First, you'll notice that your microphone and cameras are off. If you have any questions during the presentation, just write them into the chat box at the bottom of your screen. But please know that when you chat the group, it'll be seen by everyone. So if you want to ask a question anonymously, you can message Sean Farron directly, and you'll see his name in the chat feature drop down when you click the chat box. Similarly, if you are experiencing technical difficulties, you can also message Sean, and he'll do his best to help you. We'll answer all the questions that come in through the chat at the end of this presentation. And if for some reason we can't get to all the questions that are asked before the time's up, we will post a PDF of all the Q&As to our website. Also, this webinar is being recorded, so along with the Q&A PDF that we'll be posting, we'll also post the recording of this presentation to our website for future reference. Finally, I want to quickly touch on safety. Safety is, of course, our top priority as we are currently living through a global pandemic. We are all in this together, and this situation requires that each and every one of us take the personal responsibility for the health and safety and welfare of ourselves, our community, our colleagues, our SSBC peers. And it's so extremely important that we all adhere to university guidelines, local, state, regional, and federal health guidelines, even if that means disrupting our competition plans. And on a more personal note, I want you to know that there is no right way to deal with living through a global pandemic. So lean on your team members, not literally, of course, but be kind to yourself and others and ask for help when you need it, because we're all in this together. Now, let's switch things up for a second and kick off with a poll. Let us know what your experience is with SSBC. In just a second, you should see a poll pop up on your screen. And so put in your answers there. And while you're waiting for everyone's answers to come in, see if you can find some familiar faces in these pictures. I'm not gonna lie, I definitely got the feels when choosing these pictures. It brought me back to that adrenaline rush that March and April bring as the regional event season comes around. All right, just gonna give it one more second. Okay, let's end the poll here. So as you can see, we have a pretty wide array of experiences here. I'm so happy that there's about 15% of you and it's your first time participating. Welcome. We hope that this presentation is so helpful for you. All right, we are going to move on to important dates. So we're going to talk about these important dates in more detail later on in the presentation, but I just wanted to touch on them quickly because it's important that if you haven't seen these before, that they're on the top of your mind as we're talking about the competition options that are available for you. So in just about 2 weeks, there's the pre-registration deadline of October 30th, and about 2 weeks after that, we have our decision date number 1 on November 15th, and then we have decision date number 2 on January 15th. The decision dates are really just the timeframes that AISC will be evaluating our pre-registration data and all the other circumstances in our decision matrix, which we'll touch on later, to determine if moving forward with in-person events is feasible. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, outside of these deadlines, what your team should be focusing on right now. So First, you'll want to start recruiting new team members, which I see that you have, and I'm so excited. But it's really important that you don't let this crazy year stop you from having first and second year students on your team. I'm sure you know, but knowledge transfer is so important to the long-term success and growth of your team. So get creative. You know, there are lots of ways you can engage new members, even if you don't have your career fairs and things like that, or involvement fairs. We came up with a video to help you with recruitment, which you'll see on later in this presentation. You also want to research your university's COVID-19 restrictions for clubs and travel. I know things are changing every day, but it's really important to know if your school has released guidelines for travel or for club gatherings in the spring, or if they have a timeline for decision making that you can reference. This will help you manage your team expectations for the year. Pre-registration's coming up, which I already talked about, and then you should be starting your project, but do so virtually. We request that teams don't gather at all in person during the fall semester, and to help you with this, you can reference our strategies for working remotely as a team guide, which Christy will touch on later. Finally, make sure you don't commit to any non-refundable purchases until after decision date number 1 on November 15th. Now I'm going to pass the mic to Christy so she can tell you all about the competition options we have this year.
All right, well, thank you, Sadie. So as Sadie mentioned, we have a few options this year for the SSBC. So there are 3 different options you can choose from. There's the SSBC in person, SSBC compete from campus, and the supplemental competition, which is brand new this year, and it's 100% virtual. So we'll walk through each of these 3 competitions in more detail to let you know what the options are and help you and your team make a decision. So on our website, you can actually find a COVID-19 virus action plan. So this summarizes our approach this year to navigating this global pandemic. And within that document, we have this team decision matrix. So I just want to show that to you at the beginning to let you know the questions you should be thinking about in this process. So the first 2 questions you should really consider are, is your team able to fabricate a physical bridge? Whether or not you're able to do that will dictate which of these 3 competitions are going to be best for you. Then the second question is your team able and willing to travel to an in-person regional event? That answer could be yes or it could be no. So depending on how you answer those questions, you have several different options to choose from. So we'll go through these individually. So the first is the SSBC in person. So this is the format that most of you are pretty familiar with. So in the format this year will be similar to previous SSBC events. It includes a building and testing component at an on-campus event organized by a regional event host school. Now, the big caveat is if local conditions are safe. So we're planning to have these regional events, but you'll see the conditions might warrant having to cancel some of these events, but we're going to do the best we can to hopefully make these happen. So the big question that we get is, will the in-person regional event look different because of COVID-19? And the answer is yes, it will look different. And we will work very closely with the host schools to determine exactly how these regional events will differ from what maybe you've experienced in previous years. And again, safety is our first priority. So we want to make sure that these events are safe and allowed by the host university and the local authorities. And so if that is the case, there might be things like masks. We may stagger competition times so that only one team is building at a time. The attendance will likely be limited, so it could just be judges and builders in the venue without any spectators or visitors or sponsors. Some of the events like the captain's meeting and participant forum will be virtual, and also the award ceremony will likely be virtual. So stay tuned for more information as we get closer to these regional events. And again, we'll work very closely with each host school in their unique situation. So this year, I'm happy to tell you that the bridge geometry is the same as the 2020 competition. So the rules committee recognizes that you put in a lot of hard work last year and most of the events were canceled. And they wanted to help honor that. And so as a result, the bridge geometry is the exact same as it was in 2020, but there is a different site plan. So you will notice that the construction lane is shorter. So you will have to come up with a different way to construct your bridge. What that means is that you actually have options this year. So your team can decide if you want to use last year's bridge as is. Maybe your bridge was completely finished or really close to being finished. You can use that bridge again this year for the 2021 competition. Alternatively, you could modify last year's bridge, make some changes, maybe make some improvements, or you could design and fabricate a brand new bridge. So it's really up to you and your unique situation at your school and where your team is at to decide how you want to approach the 2021 competition. I will also note that this year there is a new cost estimation category, so be on the lookout for that in the rules. So we're asking you to make some estimates on how your bridge will perform under the 6 loading cases. So make sure you pay attention. All right, so then option number 2 is the compete from campus. And so this will allow you to compete in the SSBC from your own university if the local conditions are safe. So maybe your team isn't able to travel to another school, or maybe you're just not comfortable traveling to another school to compete, and that's okay. We're giving you the option to compete from your own campus. So you would still build and test your bridge on your own campus. And you enter this competition by a video submission. And then a little bit different than the in-person events, AISC will be organizing the logistics for this competition. So there's a few things that you will need in order to do so, to compete from your campus. First, you'll need a level floor space that's taped off for the site plan. And hopefully that shorter construction lane will be helpful, so you won't need quite as much space this year. You will also need material for decking and 2,500 pounds of load. You will need a mechanism to prevent the load from falling if you have a sudden bridge failure or collapse. And you also need one judge who's familiar with the competition. Now, they can be affiliated with your school, but they just can't be someone who's on your team. And in early 2021, we will host a training webinar for all the judges who are going to be assisting in Compete from Campus events. So one question is, can my team still qualify for the national finals? And the answer is a big yes. So even though the Compete from Campus is slightly different than the regional events, there still will be an opportunity for the top performing teams to make it to the national finals. We don't know exactly what that will look like. We'll have to take a look after pre-registration as far as how many teams will make it to the national finals, but please know that there is still the opportunity to make it to that event in May. So let's take a look at the differences between the in-person and the Compete from Campus when it comes to teams competing against each other. So the first scenario is, what happens if my team is unable to travel to the in-person regional event? So your regional event is still happening, but your team just is not going to be able to make the trip. Well, we would encourage you to participate in the Compete from Campus. And so when you do that, your team will be placed in a separate region and will compete only against other teams that are also participating from their own campus. We recognize it's not a one-to-one comparison. It's different competing from your own campus versus at an organized regional event. And so you will only be judged against teams on that playing field. The other scenario is what happens if my team's entire in-person regional event gets canceled. Well, if that's the case, all teams in that region, including those that were previously planning to compete from campus, they will compete against each other according to the Compete from Campus guidelines. So you'll all compete against the same schools within your region if that regional event gets canceled. All right, then the third and final option is the supplemental competition. So I mentioned earlier that this is a 100% virtual option. This was especially developed for the teams that may not have any opportunity to get together on campus. Maybe you're at a school where you're fully online and not even attending courses on campus. But this competition is open to all teams. The bridge that you will be designing for the supplemental competition is the same geometry as the main competition, and it's the same site plan. So you would not have to design another bridge. And as part of this competition, there are 2 levels similar to the main events. So there will be a regional event competition, and then the top qualifying teams will make it to a national finals event. And the overall winner of that national finals event will receive an invitation to the 2022 national finals. So that's kind of an exciting prize for winning the supplemental competition. And as part of the supplemental competition, you will be asked to put together a portfolio that summarizes the design of your bridge. And that includes a written report and a video. And within that written report, you'll talk about the design of your bridge, the analysis of your bridge, and your construction sequencing. Each of those sections are about a 5-page written narrative. And then we'll also ask you to put together a video that summarizes your whole process, and as if you were presenting your bridge design to a client. And I will note that for the national finals judging, your score also includes a public vote. So your videos will be publicly available and people can vote on their favorites. Okay, so we have 3 different options out there. So again, the question we get is, can my team compete in both the supplemental competition and the SSBC in person, or they compete from campus? And the answer is yes. Your team has the opportunity to decide what is going to work best for you. If you think your team can do both an in-person event and the supplemental competition, go for it. We want to see you do those things. If you don't think you can do both, or maybe your situation just won't allow you to participate in the in-person event or even fabricate a bridge, then go for the supplemental competition. So talk it over with your team, talk it over with your faculty advisor, and figure out what's going to work best for you. But just know that you can compete in both the supplemental competition and the traditional format. Many of you may not have a lot of experience yet with preparing engineering reports. And so the supplemental competition might look a little bit daunting. And I want you to know that we do have resources to help get you started. So we'll talk about a few of those here. So the first is, we hosted a webinar about 2 weeks ago that we called Winning Writing Strategies for Students. And so we provided an overview of the supplemental competition, and we had 3 practicing structural engineers who shared their experiences with preparing engineering reports. So they talked about what it's like to work on design teams, how do you distill that down into a written format, what are the important things that you're looking for when you're analyzing a structure or maybe thinking about your construction sequence. And then we had an overall just kind of conversation with them about writing reports in general. Like, what's it like to work with a team member remotely? Or how do you divide the tasks up when you're putting together a large report? It's about a 90-minute webinar, and you can find it on our website at aisc.org/SSBC webinars. So the recording is posted as well as the handouts. Additionally, we are partnering with the National Council of Structural Engineers Associations, or NCSEA. And they are an organization that represents structural engineers associations located across the country. And so they have 44 member organizations that represent the areas that are shaded in green on the map. And so you can visit our website at the address on the slide and get a contact list for a local contact in your area. And you can reach out to them and they'll help pair you with a mentor for your team. So perhaps that mentor can help give you some feedback on your design report, or maybe just some feedback on your overall bridge design. But it's a way for you to get connected with a local structural engineer. So again, you can visit the address on the slide for a little bit more information. And we also have a template to help you with that initial contact. And at this point, I will pass it back to Sadie.
Thank you, Christy. All right. So now that you have an idea of what the different competitions are all about, let's circle back to these 2 items that we touched on earlier. So we have our important dates and the team decision matrix. So your first step is to use the decision matrix to determine what competitions you want to participate in. And then the next step is pre-registering your team for those competitions before our quickly approaching deadline of October 30th. So whether your team decides to compete in SSBC, the supplemental competition, or both, we ask that each faculty advisor pre-registers your team by October 30th. So to pre-register, your advisor just needs to go to aisc.org/SSBC, and on the homepage, you'll see a button that will bring you to this pre-registration page. And on that page, there's detailed steps on how you should pre-register. So you'll click this complete pre-registration form button, and it'll bring you to the sign in to log in for your faculty advisor to log in with their AISC account. Most faculty have done this before through past pre-registrations, but if it's their first time, they can create an account, as you can see at the bottom of the sign-in page. The pre-registration form is going to ask a few questions that'll be used by AISC for us to help us make decisions on November 15th and January 15th. So this includes selecting the competitions you're going to participate in, as well as your confidence level in your team's ability to fabricate a bridge, your ability to travel in the spring, and whether or not your team plans to reuse your 2020 bridge. If you have a faculty advisor that maybe is a bit removed from the everyday decisions made by your club, it would be really smart to communicate these things to your advisor before they complete pre-registration. So as I mentioned on the last slide, we are going to ask for your confidence level in your ability to fabricate a bridge and travel. So we're going to talk about a few question and answers that can come up while you're pre-registering. So this first question is, what are your team's options for pre-registering if we're hopeful but not yet sure if we can fabricate a bridge? The answer is to pre-register your team for all competitions you hope to participate in for 2020. In addition to the confidence level questions, we also have a comment box for you to give us as many details as you want about your current situation. And so we'll use this, even if you end up changing in the future, we'll use all this data that you're giving us to be able to plan accordingly over the next few months. Next question. What if my team's competitions plans change due to university restrictions or other circumstances after we pre-register? The answer is to email Sean Farron, his email's right here, and email him as soon as your competition plans change. He'll update our pre-registration data, alert the host schools, and if you have any comments that can help us, you can include that in the email. Next question. What if my team does not plan to participate in any competition this year, and therefore we won't be pre-registering? So if your team decides that you're not going to participate this year, it would be so helpful if you could complete our team non-participation form, which can also be found right at the homepage of aisc.org/SSBC. So every year around the pre-registration deadline, we do kind of an inventory of what teams have pre-registered, what haven't, and we contact every single faculty advisor individually. So if you want to save us a little bit of time, but also save your faculty advisor from getting contacted a couple times from us, it would really help us if you could fill that out. Next question. If our in-person SSBC regional event is canceled, are we required to email AISC to change our pre-registration to SSBC Compete from Campus? And the answer is no. If your in-person regional event's canceled, we'll automatically change all teams that are designated as SSBC in-person to SSBC Compete from Campus. So you don't have to worry about that. But if for some reason your team maybe only wants to participate in SSBC in person, so when your event's canceled, you no longer want to participate at all, then you'll have to email us, or else we won't know that. So just send Sean an email if you guys decide not to participate. Now, we have decision date number 1. That's on November 15th, and it's 2 weeks after the pre-registration deadline. Some of you have asked why these dates don't align, and the reason is with this decision matrix that's on the left-hand side, we take our pre-registration data and really evaluate all of these questions. So we need about 2 weeks to talk to host schools, to talk between our team, and decide what the best action is for each specific regional event moving forward. As you can see, there are a few different matrix items that we're going to go off of. It could be the decision of the host school. Maybe they just know their school won't allow in-person events, or it could be that more than 75% of the teams decided that they don't want to participate in the in-person. They're either going to do compete from campus or the supplemental. And no matter what decision we make on November 15th for your region, you'll be notified if your event is canceled. You're also probably wondering what your team should focus on between decision date number 1 and decision date number 2. Your team can work on your project further by ordering materials and planning for fabrication. Just remember that it's still discouraged by AISC for your team to gather in 2020, especially if it's against your school's school or local guidelines. And if at any point between these dates your competition plans change, let us know. And finally, after November 15th, all teams that are designated as SSBC in-person or compete from campus will be mailed the $500 team stipend check. And no matter what happens after you're mailed that check, whether maybe your event gets canceled, you decide you can't participate due to university restrictions, you will be able to keep that $500 stipend no matter what. After November 15th, it's yours. Then we have decision date number 2. So on January 15th, all in-person regional events will be evaluated again using this decision matrix. Our hope is that by January, many universities will have communicated their plans for the spring semester, and then you will have therefore communicated it to us, and we'll have a clear idea of if in-person events are feasible. And that's why it's so important that you keep us in the loop if your competition plans change. We'll be looking at if the in-person regional events will be canceled with teams competing from their individual campuses, or worst case, we're really crossing our fingers this doesn't happen, but if circumstances get worse, we may have to cancel SSBC entirely with only the supplemental competition taking place. No matter what, we'll announce everything on or before January 15th to all teams. And just keep in mind, if your team can swing it, maybe you guys are deciding to reuse your bridge from last year or something like that, but it might be smart to hold off on all non-refundable purchases until January 15th, just because that might align more with your specific university's decision-making process. I know last year, a lot of teams made some purchases, and then were really bummed when they couldn't come to the competition. So if you think you can swing it, it might be smart to wait until January 15th. Now let's do another poll. We're curious if you have decided what competitions your team plans to participate in. So just fill out this poll here. If you have, you can also put if you haven't decided as well. All right, we have about 85% of everyone in there. As you can see, it is pretty across the board. So thank you so much for staying engaged and giving us some info there. Now I'm going to pass it along to Christy to talk about our resources.
All right. Thank you, Sadie. So yeah, it looked like we had a good variety of people in the audience who plan to participate in the different events, and maybe some of you still don't know. So hopefully this webinar will help you make a decision. Okay, so as Sadie said, we have a variety of resources that are available on our website. And we'll talk through each of these in a little bit more detail, but I encourage you to check out that aisc.org/SSBC. So the first thing, I highly recommend that you request email updates from us about SSBC. So on any of the pages on that website, you can look on the right-hand side and it'll be under SSBC links. There's a link that says request email updates. So that helps us stay in touch with you. We send out pretty regular updates to that email list. On the left-hand side is a snapshot of the email that went out just yesterday. So if you did not receive that email, it means you're not on that list. So please go ahead and request updates so you don't miss out on anything else. Mentioned this before, but we have a COVID-19 virus action plan. It's about a 5-page document, and it summarizes a lot of the things that we've been talking about today. So there you'll see the team decision matrix that we started out with. You'll see the decision-making dates that Sadie talked about, and then there's some general discussion about what an in-person event may or may not look like, depending on the situation in the spring. So that's a great resource for just understanding where we're coming from, and you can share that with your faculty advisor and your university as you decide whether or not you're able to travel to these events. This year, we launched a new guide that is strategies for working remotely as a team. So we recognize that it's a little bit different this year. You don't have the opportunity to meet in person with your team. That can be pretty challenging. So this guide has a lot of tips and tricks for getting started and trying to have those conversations with your team in a remote environment. So there's some tips for scheduling and task management. There's some strategies for building your team. As Sadie mentioned, it's much harder right these days to recruit newer team members. So we have some creative ideas to help get you started there. And there's also a schedule for helping you plan out your project in this remote environment. So we encourage you to check that out as well. We also have a brand new team recruitment video. You can access this directly from our website or at the YouTube link that's on the slide. It's about a 1-minute video, and it summarizes just the overview of SSBC. And there's a couple of interviews with different students just to hear about their perspective and some of the advantages of being part of a team. So we encourage you to share that link with your friends, with your classmates, to help get them excited about joining your team. Additionally, if you are interested in starting a separate club specifically for SSBC, you can form an AISC student club. So this is a new initiative that we launched last fall, and it allows you to form a club on campus that's recognized by AISC and the Education Foundation. There's a guide available on our website that kind of walks through what an AISC student club is, what are some of the advantages. We have a step-by-step guide for helping you start a club on your campus, and we also have resources for running that club. So you may be interested in forming a club just to support your SSBC activities, and we can also help you with tax-exempt status and getting a bank account for those activities. So I want to give a shout out to the AISC student clubs that we have so far for the 2020 to 2021 academic year. And we are now accepting applications for this academic year. And so you can apply at aisc.org/student clubs. And then mentioned before that we have the recordings of our webinars up on our website. So at aisc.org/SSBC webinars, you'll find the previous writing webinar up there. And then in a few days after today's webinar, we'll post today's recording. Additionally, there are slide handouts on that site. So if you missed some of the links that we have on these slides, go check out the PDF and you'll see them right there. And it's available right now if you need access to that. And that's also a great site for getting information about future webinars. So at this point, we'll go ahead and open things up for questions. So I'll just remind you that you can ask a question in the chat feature, and if you prefer to ask an anonymous question, you can send a private chat to Sean. So we'll just go ahead and use the time that we have left to answer any questions that are coming up from the audience. So Sean, what questions have we gotten so far?
Hi guys, we got a bunch of great questions. Thanks everybody for sending those in to me. And yeah, so the first question is related to Compete from Campus. And it regards purchasing decking and 2,500 pounds of angles. Purchasing the angles would be expensive for our team if we choose to compete from campus. What else can my team do?
Yeah, that's a great question because that is quite a bit of load to get your hands on in order to do the loading for your bridge. So the first thing I would say is if you have a structures lab or a civil testing lab on your campus or maybe some sort of machine shop, talk to the lab manager. They might know of some spare materials that are laying around that you could borrow or use. I'll note that it doesn't have to be at the exact same decking and the exact same size angles that we use at the regional events. But we want you to make sure that you keep safety in mind, just with how you're going to load the bridge. So be sure to talk it over with your faculty advisor, and maybe if you have a lab manager or something like that on campus, explain to them your loading plan and figure out, how you can most safely do that. The other thing I'll mention is we have an Adopt a School program where we try to pair up fabricators with universities. So you can reach out to us through the fabricator partnership request form, and we may be able to get you partnered with a fabricator in your area who may be able to donate or lend you some materials. So you might just have to get a little creative, but there are some options for getting your hands on the load.
Okay, awesome. We have a question that's related to the supplementary competition, and it's, will there be any penalties if a team doesn't compete in the supplemental competition? Is it completely optional from the other events?
Yeah, so it is a completely optional competition. There's no penalties if you choose not to do it. It's just an option that's out there in case you are unable to do the in-person event or the compete from campus. So it's really up to you as a team to decide if you want to do either the in-person or the supplemental, or if you want to try to do both, but there's no requirement that you have to do both of them.
Awesome. So this next question is for Sadie. And it's, if we pre-register for the compete from campus because our regional event was canceled, who are the other teams who will be competing with? Who are the teams we'll be competing with to see who will go to nationals from there?
Yeah, so I know this part is a little bit confusing, so we'll break it down. So if your regional event is canceled, all of the schools in your region will then essentially move to the entire region being compete from home. So you will only be competing with schools within your region. Alternatively, let's say, as Christy mentioned earlier, if your team, oh, sorry, I didn't answer the second part of that question. So if you're competing with only teams within your region, you will then, only teams within your region you will compete against each other to qualify for nationals. And if your regional event the in-person event is not canceled, and your specific team decides to compete from home, then you'll be placed in a region with the other schools throughout the country that also decided to compete from home, even though their event wasn't canceled. So it's its own compete from home region. I hope that answered the question. Feel free to chat if you have any follow-ups.
Okay, awesome. I got a bunch of questions all at once, so thank you for sending those in. I would normally reply and say thank you, but I got a bunch all at one time. Okay, so the next question, if we are submitting a video of our build when we compete from campus, can we submit our best build?
Well, so the intention here is for your team to only do your building once. So it's as if you're at a regional event. Remember, you're going to have a judge there who is watching you from start to finish. So you should not stop and restart and try to get your best qualifying video. So we encourage you to be honest about that process. And again, just treat it like you were at a normal regional event. And then I should also note that your videos should not be edited or manipulated under any circumstances. So just keep that in mind. It's a good question.
All right. Let me see here.
Sounds like there's a lot of questions. So
yeah, I'm getting organized. Okay. When will the regional competition dates be finalized? My region says to be determined right now. Our school is inquiring in order to determine whether or not we're able to fabricate starting in the spring.
All right, I will answer that. And Sean, I also saw another question that kind of aligns with it in terms of how will we know the proposed dates for nationals. So first I'll touch on the regionals. At sometime this week, we're going to be sending out a packet to all of the hosts, and it will give them a breakdown of the items that they really need to be considering over the next few months. And the way, in short, without going into too much detail, we think that we have to wait for the pre-registration deadlines in order for the dates to be finalized, because we're going to be working around space, different venues, how many people can you fit, are we going to be doing staggered competition times, and that may also require us to explore a few different date options. So I would hope that by the January decision date, hopefully before then, we will have set dates for everything, or at least a date range, a few days that we could choose from. Things are really different this year, and so I know that having the dates are something that's really important for you to plan, but hopefully with the time frame of not making non-refundable purchases, you can plan ahead a little bit while understanding that the host schools have a lot to work through in order to determine specific dates. We really won't have anything before the first week of March, and they usually will go through April. And then for nationals, same thing. We have been in close communication with Virginia Tech, but they are waiting right now because their athletics program hasn't released the dates that the venues are available. So I think our regional event hosts are going to be in a similar situation. So as soon as they have the availability of their venues, as well as an official okay from their university, we will announce it to you right away. We touch base with them every week, every 2 weeks, just to see how things are going.
And Sadie, I'll just jump in about nationals. The goal is to still keep the national finals around the same time that it normally is. We traditionally hold it on Memorial Day weekend, or maybe the weekend after. So you can still anticipate it'll be in that similar time frame.
Okay, awesome. So we have another question. This one's about student clubs. What are the benefits of starting an AISC student club for an SSBC team?
Yeah, good question. So each AISC student club becomes formally affiliated with AISC. So that means that you can receive tax-exempt status and some other financial benefits. We also cover your club activities in terms of insurance. So any of your SSBC activities would be covered under our insurance. And then you also get the support of the AISC staff and our membership network. So there's a lot of different things that you can take advantage of with being a student club. And again, that guide walks you through how to start a club on your campus. And we also, I forgot to mention, we have templates out there with a club constitution and some presentation slides if you need to give a formal presentation to your university about forming a club.
Okay. During registration, if we are able to choose a region that has an in-person regional competition that is, sorry, one second. Gotta reread this really quick. During registration, are we able to choose a region that has an in-person regional competition that isn't our own? If yes, what will happen if the host doesn't allow us to compete at their school?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So even before this year, we implemented that all schools can choose to participate in a different regional event if they want to, and that still applies this year. So what you'll do is you'll mark your traditional region in pre-registration and then mark the region that you want to participate in, and we'll reach out to the host school to see if that's accepted. The thing that's changed this year is that typically we know what a normal year will look like, and so the host will say yes or no. I think under these circumstances, and it's good that it's only a few weeks away, is that we'd have to really see, the host will probably have to wait to see what pre-registrations have come in at the final hour to be able to confidently make that decision, yes or no. But if you were to pre-register today, we would have that 2-week time frame right around the deadline, and we'll get an answer to you. If a host school does say no, then you would choose to compete from a different region that we could ask you to say yes or no. We could ask them, or you could choose to compete from campus from the region that you want.
Okay, great. So the next question is, what are some things that participating schools can do to recruit and maintain membership while all meetings are virtual? For our school, the physical fabrication of the bridge was the most exciting parts for new members and lower classmen. But with that taken out of the picture for the supplemental competition, how can we still be attractive to student members?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a harder environment to navigate this year, and it is disappointing to not be able to fabricate a bridge potentially, because we know that that is a pretty exciting thing. So I first encourage you to check out that strategies guide for working remotely. We have a few ideas in there, but I would encourage you to host a virtual event with some people who might want to join your team and talk about the competition in general. You can showcase your previous year's experience, especially if you're recruiting some first or second year students. Those are people that you might be able to keep on your team for the following years when we can get back to normal. But just kind of sharing with them the whole process that you follow from receiving a set of specifications and designing a bridge. We know the fabrication is the fun part where you get to get your hands on the bridge, but there's a lot of cool things that you can do and learn through that design process as well. And so similarly with the supplemental competition, just getting underclassmen involved in that process can help create that spark. It's going to be a different spark than previous years, but we really hope that you can engage some new members and get them involved in the process, especially if they may not have had those higher level structural analysis classes yet, but just kind of include them in your conversations and let them see that design process from start to finish. It can be just as exciting, just it's coming from a different perspective. And then we also encourage you just to try hosting some social events online, some trivia nights. We do that here at AISC. We host some trivia events every couple of months just to see each other and have some fun. So try to integrate that in as well to build that camaraderie.
I want to add one thing, Christy, to that as well, is if you end up having success with some creative thing that you implement to get new members, email it over to Sean or myself, and we will find a way to share it on our team resources page. I think you guys are on the ground, so if you find that something works, tell us so we can spread the word.
Awesome. Thanks again. To everybody who sent questions, thanks for sending them. I had planned to reply to everybody, like I said, but I got a bunch in like a couple of minutes. So, okay, the next question is related to compete from campus. Do the load weights have to be triangle-shaped angles, the L-shaped angles that we normally use, or can they be other shapes? Our school has 20 to 50-pound cylinders, about 2 feet long, which we've used in the past to test our load capacity.
Yeah, so it does not have to be the exact same thing that we use at the regional events or the national finals. The load can be any object that can be used safely. So it could be your cylinders, it could be some masonry blocks, it could be some sandbags. I just again encourage you to talk your plan over with your faculty advisor, and also if you have a lab manager on campus as well, just to make sure that whatever you're using, you can use to load your bridge in the safest manner that you can. But yeah, you might just have to get creative, and that sounds like one good way to do it.
All right, this is another compete from campus question. How will the dice rolls work for compete from campus events?
Yeah, so we recognize that these compete from campus situations are not perfect. They're not just like the regional events, but we'll try to make it as close as we can. So the die roll will be announced as late as possible. And I forgot to mention earlier, when it comes to the compete from campus, we will be releasing some more information about those in the coming months as the rules committee develops the logistics for what those will look like. So stay tuned for that. But at least Right now, again, there was that list of things you should be prepared for to have on your campus, but then we'll have more information and guidelines for what those events will look like in the near future.
Okay. So if we participate in multiple competitions, does the bridge need to be the same across all competitions, or can they differ? For example, use one bridge design for the supplemental competition and another for the in-person or physical competition.
Yeah, so the supplemental competition is completely separate from the in-person or the compete from campus events. So if you want to design two different bridges, that's fine. It's up to you. The two types of competitions do not bear on one another or talk to one another in terms of your entries. So it's if you want to go for two different designs of your bridge, by all means, go for it.
All right. Okay. If the national finals event were to be canceled, would there be a chance to compete from campus at a national level?
Well, we don't know yet. So that's kind of my I don't know answer. It's really just going to depend on how things shake out with the regional events, and what the spring looks like. And so this is kind of where I just have to tell everyone to stay tuned for how things will work out. But the rules committee is weighing all of the options, of trying to provide you with the most opportunity to compete like you do in the past. So I wish I had a crystal ball that I could see what May will look like, but again, we're just weighing the information as it comes in, and we'll keep you posted if that becomes an opportunity, if that in-person national finals event gets canceled.
Okay. So this question is related to compete from campus again. Do we have to submit a video before the actual compete from campus competition, or do we just submit a video of us building the bridge and doing the various tests?
I guess I'm not quite sure.
I think it was, sorry to interrupt, but
Go ahead.
do we have to submit a video before the actual on-campus competition, or do we just submit a video of us building the bridge?
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. So that do we have the dates worked out for that? So if you're competing from campus and your regional event is still happening, remember you're in a separate region. So it's not a one-to-one comparison. So you just stay tuned for what the requirements are for that compete from campus component. So again, if your in-person regional event is happening, my goodness, if your regional event is happening, you'll be in kind of a separate little bubble with a different deadline. So that's when you would be submitting the video of you building that bridge. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing.
Okay. We're almost at the mark. I could ask another question if you guys want one.
Yeah,
okay.
Let's do one more.
In the past, there were scholarships associated with the awards at national finals. Are those still available this year?
Yes, they are. So we have special awards that include a $1,000 scholarship that is awarded to the team to then give to a student or students on that team. So two of those awards are given at the national finals to a team that participated there. So there's the Robert E. Shaw Junior Spirit of the Competition Award, and there's also the Frank J. Hatfield Ingenuity Award. So both of those awards are given just at the national finals event. So that'd be that in-person event. But then we have another award that is the Team Engagement Award, and any team can qualify for that award. So that award recognizes a team that is committed to building a diverse team and creating an inclusive environment. So we ask you, if you want to be considered for that award, to submit a 1 to 2 page narrative that describes your team's efforts this year towards things like equity and diversity. And so the applications for that are due on March 29th. So you can submit your application, your essay directly on our website. So yes, good question. All 3 of those scholarships are still available.
Awesome. Sadie, did you want to talk about the end of the
Yeah, all
podcast?
right. So this about sums up our presentation. For next steps, we would really appreciate it if you could complete this post-event survey, which Sean is going to post in the chat in just a minute. And then make sure you get all your team members to sign up to request email updates and pre-register by Friday, October 30th. We're gonna wait for that link to be posted in here, and then you'll have that. We would really appreciate it if you could fill it out before you head out for the end of the day. Thank you so much, everyone.
And we'll keep this open just for a moment for people to copy and paste that link. And then we'll stop the webinar. But thank you everyone again for attending.